All right, welcome everyone to the Portland Utility Board meeting. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically with board members and relevant city staff are able to attend remotely, electronically, or by phone. And the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. As you know, the meeting is being recorded and the public will have an opportunity to provide comments during our public comment portion of the agenda. And you can always provide written testimony to the board by emailing us at utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. So PUB's beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles are that we believe and act upon our anti-racist principles in these meeting spaces and interactions with PUB. While every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. And this means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And this means we have to speak up and speak out. Each person on this board is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we will remain focused on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
My name is Amy Archer-Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you're addressing. The chat box is only viewable by myself, so please limit any chats to technical or logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board and may lower your hand once you've begun speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can also raise your hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking. If desired, it's not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. As mentioned, the public comment will be taken during the period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with myself or raise your hand when that comes up. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. I'll pass it back to you, Robin, for the agenda.
All right, so members, we'll be having a few updates on what's been happening with the bureaus in the city, and then a reflection on our field trip to the Tryon Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, and then hopefully a fruitful discussion and possible wrapping up of our budget and policy values letter, and hopefully we'll get that sent out, and that way we can have an impact on the budgeting process early. And if there's time permitting, I believe one of our PUB members has actually brought up interests related to eco roof requirements. So if we have time for that, we'll give them the floor and have a conversation regarding that. Go ahead for the next slide, Amy. All right, so any PUB members want to go ahead and take the floor with a disclosure of communications? Go ahead.
I'll jump in. This is Bob Solinger. Riverkeeper has been testifying left and right on issues like the new potential Bureau of Natural Resources, on the transfer of programs and staff from BES to parks, on the potential to eliminate eco-roofs and bird-friendly building, just a whole slew of things that are moving at the city right now that, from our perspective, undermine in fundamental ways the operations of the Bureau of Environmental Services.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Julia.
Similarly, I didn't have the opportunity to testify publicly, but I did reach out individually outside of my role as a PUB member to Commissioner Rubio's office and the mayor's office to support going the natural resources department route and not the route that ended up being adopted by council. So I did express concerns.
All right, thank you for that, Julia. Anyone else have a disclosure of communication before we move on? All right, with none, let's go on to public comment. Amy, has anyone submitted public comment before the meeting?
No, I've not received anything in advance.
All right, and if anyone, any member of the public is in the room now, you can go ahead and raise your hand for a few moments of time. All right, I see Jessica has their hand raised. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, Jessica Zano, member of the public. I'm here as I continue to be over the past year plus. I'm frustrated. Base charges are up 40% over the last 5 years. It's unsustainable. I'll continue to watch this. I have, without success, actually seen any movement out of this group that has been able to impact rates in a positive manner, but I'll continue to watch this and continue to be engaged and watch what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Jessica. Is there anyone else, a member of the public, that would like to speak at this moment? All right, seeing none, we can go on to the next. All right, so right now we'll just take a moment or two to review and approve the October 19th pub meeting draft minutes, as well as the field trip summary report from October 25th. Go ahead and raise your hand if there's anything that we need to adjust or edit. All right, seeing no hands raised, we will accept the minutes as they are. Wait, we have 6 people. Yes, we can. Okay. All right, and then I will pass the floor to Amy.
Great, thank you, Robin. Just wanted to cover a few brief things at the beginning of the meeting. The first is to welcome the new ex officio, Rosalind Gray, who is coming from the Bureau of Environmental Services, and today is the first meeting that they have been able to participate. So Rosalind, if you are in the room and comfortable, if you want to just briefly introduce yourself to the group, now would be a great opportunity to do that.
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
Yep. Yep. My name is Rosalind Gray, and I'm an engineer with BES. I work in engineering design services on the surface water restoration team. So my days are busy with wetland and stream restoration project delivery, predominantly through the capital improvement program. And I'm thrilled to join this team and learn more and support the work that you guys have been doing for quite a while. So yeah, I'm here. I'm sure we'll talk more. Thanks.
Thank you for volunteering and joining us. Look forward to engaging with you over the year. I did want to let folks know that I received word that the BES rate study recommendation hearing before council has been delayed again. So I don't know when it will be rescheduled for, but I will share some information as soon as I hear it. Bob, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to add something about that?
Yeah, I guess I'm hearing rumors that it's cities under a lot of pressure, both on the floating homes and also from industrial interests. And just curious if are there changes being proposed or considered to the rate study? Is that the reason it's being delayed at this point, is to respond to that pushback that's occurring?
I'm not sure if anybody in the room is able to speak to that. I believe Farshad is on the call. So maybe the most likely, do you have any information, or is it something that we may need to report back later? Go ahead.
Thanks, and thanks for the question, Bob. I think that the main reason for delay is there has been some feedback from some of the constituents impacted by the rate study to that they have not had ample opportunity to hear and discuss their concerns with the commissioner, and the commissioner has made has continued to create opportunities for that outreach. So I think it's really, the delay is to make sure that everybody's who has an interest in this has an opportunity to sit down with the commissioner and share their concerns.
All right, I guess I just want to put myself on record here as expressing some concern about that. This process has been a very long one. It was well vetted. It's going out for a public hearing where everybody has an opportunity to weigh in, including the pub and pub members and the constituents that are affected. It affects a lot of folks. We've recently seen a number of situations where just before something came out for a public hearing, it got modified fairly substantially to appease specific interest groups. And I think that would be an unfortunate precedent to continue here. I think staff did a good job. It was scheduled for a hearing. It ought to have that hearing, let people weigh in. My fear here is that we're going to see another example where something gets modified at the last minute to appease somebody, and then it makes it very, very hard to have a real discussion about the merits and the problems associated perhaps with that thing that was modified, because it's no longer in there. And so you're basically having a discussion about a phantom issue at that point. And this council, I think, has been worse than most about this. So I just want to put myself on the record, at least, because I think it is important that these things, when we take the time to do a real study, bring forward a recommendation, to bring it to the pub, have us weigh in, have it modified behind the scenes, to me is problematic in terms of public process. I'm making some assumptions in there, but I don't think they're far-fetched.
I wonder, so just as point of order as regarding what has taken place from pub's perspective, you did, I finalized the letter that we had drafted that was a pretty general support letter. And before I saw that it was pulled, I had submitted that as written testimony to the most recent one, but of course we'll resubmit that letter or a revised version of that letter if there's interest from the pub in getting more specific about any of the issues that you have concerns about. If you recall, I think because the timing was so close, the letter was pretty general and didn't really dive into any of the details, for example, regarding floating homes or otherwise. So if there's interest in that, it's certainly up for discussion from the board, and I could revise if appropriate.
Well, I guess just to follow up on my comment, my hope is that, it renders these kinds of public oversight bodies meaningless if, we're commenting on things, in a process that then gets modified later. And I think my hope would, bare minimum, would be if changes are going to be made between now and the hearing, between the public comment period ending and the hearing, that we're going to hear about those. From my perspective, and maybe we can put ourselves on record on this, it's inappropriate to have a public comment period and then change the document before the hearing. We ought to have a full and complete hearing and then change the document, bring forward your changes. But these behind the scenes modifications at the last minute that we've been seeing occasionally are really, really problematic. I think they really corrupt the public process. Once you have that public comment period, the document shouldn't change until amendments are brought forward in the light of day. If other people don't feel that way, I respect that, but I don't like these behind the scenes kinds of things that seem to be happening.
Yes, I'd like to hear from other folks in the room. I see a thumbs up from Robin, the chair. I'm wondering if others also share concern. One option could be communicating that concern just directly to the commissioner's office, either directly from a member, or I could at least submit that in writing to the commissioner's office. I don't believe the commissioner's staff person is here on the meeting today, Jack. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, I share this concern, and you read my mind, and that I was like wondering what the action is that we could take. I definitely like the idea of it being in writing so that it's, documented. And then it's just a question of, is it coming from like the chair, or is it coming from all of us? Is it, I don't know how you want to go about expressing it, but like, I very much share the same concern.
Hey, this is Robin. With this type of item, I don't know if Amy would be the one to answer this. Is it best to put a pin in it specifically for like our upcoming meeting, or would to wait about 2 weeks to address it be missing the opportunity?
I would say if you wanted to share some concern, that doing that in writing sooner than later, because I don't know, when there's usually some time lag between when something has to be filed and when it's on a council agenda. But since this is documents that have been filed, I suppose only if there were changes that there would be some additional time, but it can be challenging based on your meeting dates and the holidays coming up. I'm not sure where it's going to fall. But it certainly could be just an email from staff on behalf of the pub, or I can help craft something to come from the chair. Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Amy. I just wanted to express my support for some kind of communication, and I am in 100% agreement with all the comments that have been made about concerns. So. And I'm afraid my ability to participate is a little bit limited. I'm sort of in transit here. So I just wanted to get that in while I'm stopped.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate those of you who are in transit and still taking the time to attend the meeting, even though you're quite busy. I'm hearing from enough of you that there's interest and support. So I think I can take generally the words that Bob shared and kind of craft something, and then connect with Robin about submitting it from the chair, or just myself capturing sentiment that occurred in the most recent meeting. So I'm comfortable with either option if there's a preference for one or the other. Right, I'm not hearing any alternatives, so I will go ahead and craft something, and then I will make sure and send it out to the group, and we'll also keep you posted once the Bureau knows more about when it will be scheduled. All right, so the final piece on the updates for the beginning of the meeting was a general update about the city organizational structure and the hearing that took place on November 1st. So you should have received some links to the public hearing from me as part of your read ahead materials. Just wanted to provide some space for those who watched it or were there for the meeting to share any additional information. But obviously one of the main major changes that had happened was the shift of the natural areas and tree management under the Parks Bureau. And I'm not clear what exactly the next steps are related to that. I think it was unexpected at the time. And so I think there's probably more work and planning to do around that. But that was something that was put on the table by one of the commissioners and was approved by the majority. Bob, go ahead. Bob, if you're speaking, I think you're still muted.
Sorry. I'll try to be brief, but I just want to make sure people understand how big of a deal this was. Commissioner Ryan brought forth a amendment the night before the hearing, literally the night before the hearing, to move tree programs and natural area programs from BES to parks. There was no analysis of the financial implications, the staffing implications, parks' capacity to handle this, the regulatory implications, and so on. None. There was none. They simply moved major programs from one bureau to another, and the staff and potentially the funding that goes with it. There was no discussion about the implications of these things. What dominated that hearing were three commissioners who seemed to have an axe to grind with the mayor or with Commissioner Mapps, and basically voted that way. And so, having watched city council hearings for 30 years, this was one of the most sad and distressing hearings I've ever been part of, because it was utterly irresponsible. And we're going to have to sort out the mess going forward, but it has major implications for BES and its ability to meet its mission. There are serious legal implications to what occurred. The city's been sued over these things in the past. And the Natural Resources Bureau got shot down, which would have allowed us a much more thoughtful, careful, deliberative process. And a lot of work has already gone into it in terms of how we restructure. So it was an incredibly disappointing hearing. And I would just add that public input was overwhelmingly in favor of the Natural Resources Bureau and against moving these things at the last minute. And when I say overwhelmingly, I'm talking about a couple of hundred emails that came in, of which I believe either 2 or 3 went against the Natural Resources Bureau and for this decision. The public testimony was 100% in support of the Natural Resources Bureau, except for a couple of people that Commissioner Ryan lined up to testify who truly appeared not to know what they were testifying about. It was really bizarre testimony. But I think as we start to think about the budget cycle and organizational structure and decision-making, I think this thing runs contrary to every single value we have put on the table, whether it's equity or being informed in advance or protecting our natural environment or caring about staff. It was frankly one of the most disgusting decisions I've seen in my time doing this work. And if I sound, overly distressed about this, maybe I am, but I just feel like it was a stunning hearing to do this kind of a thing. And I question why we're even here when this kind of thing wasn't even brought to us in advance. I'm done.
Julia, go ahead.
I'll be quick. I just want to second all of that. It is really distressing to have such a huge change made and not even be consulted, and also have such overwhelming public input completely ignored. But anyway, I mean, it's clearly a politicized process right now, but yeah, it's a really, the transition, it's just not the process was terrible, and now that what we have to deal with is going to be just a very different path moving forward. And also the commissioners making the decision to hold on to their bureaus until the very last minute is very unhelpful in the transition as well. It's really, it was never going to be easy, but this is just, we're definitely doing it the hard way.
I'm not sure that I have any suggestions as far as next steps because I don't know. I mean, as you said, it was a politicized decision, and I think that many people were caught off guard. The pub has gone on record previously with public comment to council with concerns about this exact thing. I mean, certainly during last budget cycle and over, I can probably pull every letter, and there's some concerns that are shared about things moving forward without adequate public process and certainly engagement of the pub. So certainly is a message that we can continue to reiterate in whatever form is available to us. I'm not clear about the next steps. I know that there's still planning that had been going on and will continue to go on. It's just obviously going to shift now based on the decision that was made. And so as any information comes to me, I will share it with the pub. But otherwise, if somebody wants to propose some sort of action, please go ahead and put that on the floor as well. Bob, go ahead.
I think we should put ourselves on record. I think we should send, and by the way, credit to Don and to Commissioner Maps, that they were outstanding at this hearing. And I think Don was incredibly brave to get up there and testify the way she did. But I think she really did speak truth to power on this one. And Commissioner Maps, I think, did a great job as well. So credit to both of them. I should have said that originally. I think we should put ourselves on record, though. I think we should send a fairly scathing letter to City Council saying that this was absolutely unacceptable, that it was disrespectful to the community, it was disrespectful to the pub, it was poorly thought out, and that we need information. We would like a full presentation on this and its implications. And I think if we can put in some very specific things, you know, how will the city meet regulatory obligations? How will the city meet legal obligations? How will the city meet financial obligations? I think we can just pose those things as questions, and I'm happy to work on it. But I think we need to be on record. I think otherwise there's not a whole lot of point in us being here at all at this point. And again, I don't mean that to sound like hyperbole, but I think when they start moving pieces of the Bureau out without even notice, what is the point of public process at all?
Karen, go ahead.
Again, I just want to state my support for some kind of communication to the council. I mean, this is very much, as we've alluded to and given the example, very much like what happened with the budget hearing and the budget process. And I think this is, perhaps even, I don't know. It's hard to make these things relative, but worse or more egregious, or I mean, it happened once, and maybe they would have listened to some of our concerns and lots of other people's concerns then, and not done it again. But now it's happened again to a much greater extent. So, I mean, and we'll probably spitting into the wind, but I do think it warrants a public statement of outrage, that, as even from just our perspective as community members of a community advisory committee, this kind of behavior is truly insulting and discourages public participation. And it almost looks like that's what the intent is. So, yeah, I just support sending some kind of communication along those lines.
Thank you, Karen. Lorraine, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. I reviewed the video of the meeting, and it was shocking what happened. And the reason being the shocking thing about it is the fact that that amendment came up the night before with such little time or effort spent into really trashing out some of the key issues. However, what was most bothersome for me is that there was agreement by 3 commissioners. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the public record and the public meeting requirements of holding some kind of behind the scene conversations that may or may not have happened, but there was very little that how can I put this, that really I really went there, and that was the most concerning thing to me, is that is the council operating at the highest level of public meeting requirement, where the business of the city is not discussed outside the forum of a public meeting. That's where I went. I'm not saying that it happened or it didn't happen, but I think that that was the most disturbing thing to me based on how it played out. So I just wanted to share that. And it clearly was a turf war of people holding on. It was definitely a power play, and it certainly wasn't in the best interest of the greater community. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Lorraine. Rosalind, go ahead.
I am attempting to lower my hand and I did it. I wanted to share with you that I understand Dawn, our director, is working closely with the Natural Resources Working Group, which is the planning process that you guys alluded to that came out of the council's 90-day directives earlier this year, to tackle this concept of a brighter future of the city's management of natural resources. So I want you to know that she is already working closely with that group, and that they have a December 1st due date for their work plan, which is the product of months of collaborative planning between parks and BES. And that work plan will be presented and is likely being crafted in concert with CAO Michael Jordan, and will be presented to council. And Dawn mentioned that she and that working group intend to get a work session with council before or during the budget process that's required to put this amendment into motion. So it's just a little bit of extra information for this group.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Rosalind. Any other comments before we proceed? I'm hearing general support from folks about wanting to document your concerns. So I can work on crafting something, and maybe I heard Bob volunteer, so maybe I can work with you between now and the next meeting on November 16th and bring something back. We can put that on the agenda. Probably, particularly with the timeline and likely upcoming things before council in December, would want to finalize that relatively quickly. Not hearing any opposition to that idea, so I will work on that. I see some thumbs up. All right. All right, thank you for that dialogue. Moving on to the next topic.
All right. So, luckily, we were able to get a handful of people to make it out to the water treatment plant. So, I just want to thank Amy and all of the staff members who organized that from the front end and the back end. I want to give special thanks to Farshad for their wealth of knowledge, as well as the treatment plant operators that walked us through their day-to-day operations. Uh, and yeah, it ended up being a mix of pub staff, bureau directors, the budget office workers, as well as some of our bureau leadership and bureau workers. And so just kind of a quick overview of the process. They ended up teaching us essentially that there was first a physical separation of the water that is treated, and then a biological one where they essentially feed microbes to clean the water, and then that was followed by a specifically chemical separation with chlorine. And so it was intriguing to walk around the relatively small plant and just see the different mechanisms of getting clean and fresh water to Portland area residents. And we learned a couple things specifically from the engineers that were working there. We had talked about job security, especially with the transfer of ownership from the city of Portland to Lake Oswego. We learned about job demands, like what kind of hours are you putting in on a day-to-day basis. And we also actually learned from them that a lot of the jobs that they have at these treatment facilities, you have to be pretty invested in and having a knowledge base of wastewater before you come into it, and that the plant operators were really invested in making wastewater treatment more accessible to people, making those jobs more accessible. And so they had specifically mentioned a need for apprenticeships. And so that could be something that could be an equity focus and a budget focus that we discuss going forward when we think about just how to navigate water treatment. And yeah, we learned a little bit about how much Portland is using that facility and how much Lake O is using that facility. And outside of that, just wanted to thank everyone I wanted to thank Amy for picking up a few of the pub members and for providing meals. And I know that Alexis was there, so if they wanted to just give any feedback to add to that, as well as following that, I know that I believe Farshad had actually requested some sort of letter of support in regard to the Tryon Creek facility. So I just wanted to give the floor to Alexis if they're here and if they wanted to say anything in regards to their experience, and then give the floor to Farshad if they had clarification on the request of that.
Alexis is not at the meeting today, so she will not be able to share any feedback. Farshad is if you want to say anything specific, you certainly are welcome to. Otherwise, I expect probably the Bureau will be coming back to the board at a future date when the agreement's moving forward and anything is going back to council, and at which point a potential letter of support may be valuable or something for the board to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Robin and Amy. I just want to share my appreciation for taking the time for all pub and city employees that came out to visit. This is a small part of our operation, but a really important part for the Lake Oswego community and for parts of the Portland community. And it was really nice to be able to create space for folks that wanted to brave the weather to come out and see how all of that works. I want to clarify, we would welcome a letter of support. Of course, it is completely up to the board whether whether one would be appropriate in this case. And I wouldn't expect a letter before we give you all a more formal and thorough briefing on the status of the project and what is likely to go to council. We are, Amy's correct, we are kind of in the latter stages of finalizing the negotiations with the private firm that is going to be building and operating this plant. And when those negotiations are completed, some of those terms will roll over into a new interagency agreement between Portland and Lake Oswego. And that's the thing that we would be bringing to council. And well before then, when we have some more specific details, I'll be preparing a presentation and get that on your guys' agenda. So happy to also, if there's folks that really want to get out and see the plant as in a rain check scenario, we can schedule something. It may not be catered, but it will definitely, there's always interest taking people around the plant and showing them how it works. So if there's still folks that didn't get a chance to go or had to cancel, happy to make arrangements if there's still interest.
So if anybody's interested, just reach out to me and I can help connect you and coordinate that. And for those of you who weren't able to attend, if you didn't notice in the messages that I sent out, I did send some links to the little snippets of video that I was able to compile together. Audio is not great, of course, because, you know, we're walking around outside, but the bulk of it I was able to capture. I unfortunately lost some of the inside the lab conversation, which was interesting. And so I'm sorry I lost that, but the rest of it, you can kind of see a bit of the facility without having to brave the rain. So it's an option for those of you who are interested. All right, thank you, Farshad. Okay, so moving on to the document that you have been working on regarding budget and policy values. So just a quick update about where we are in the budget process. You know, it's as we often say, it seems like it's a year-round process. We were trying to, the goal or the pub's goal was to try to craft something around a general value statement and some trade-offs to consider and get that information to the bureaus early enough in the budget process that it could be considered as they're developing their requested budgets and moving forward. The council did have a work session just earlier today on the city's financial forecast, and I'll send out some links if any of you are interested in seeing that. There is a section with the public works bureaus, including Don and Gabe, presenting information about the utility forecast and some of the challenges that they've also shared with you, but just kind of the most current conversation and what was presented to council. There is another work session for council that is scheduled for next Tuesday, and that will be the focus of that is on the council setting their priorities for the budget process. And then I expect there is a budget guidance memo that should be coming out from the mayor's office later this month. And then probably a supplemental guidance memo coming out in early December. So certainly as those come out, I will share them with you as well. And kind of the final reminder is that part of the council's guidance to the budget office was to adjust the timeline for the rate setting process to be earlier in the budget process, so that by the time you know, it's getting to the mayor's proposed and those final decisions, that we're not having some significant decision points made that late in the game, giving a little more time for the bureaus and for the public consideration of what's being put forward for rates. So that's just a little bit of update about where we are in the process. So again, this first piece was primarily to give some feedback to bureau leadership and council as they are developing budget. So if you give me just a second, I will pull up the document and then we can work from there. Robin worked with me to draft some of the information, and then certainly open to more information from all of you and can continue to evolve. And it might be informed somewhat by the council's next work session next week, which will happen before the next pubs meeting. So I will watch that and also send you links to any relevant information that might want to consider as you finalize this. But again, the goal is to finalize something early enough in the process that it's able to be considered by the Bureau before their budgets are pretty well set in December, January timeframe. Right, give me just a second. Okay, so Robin, I guess I'll give the floor back to you or to anybody else in the group who has a particular area where we want to focus. We can just work our way through the document, or we can start on some particular issues that need a little bit more work and detail. So I'm open.
Yeah, this is Robin. I was gonna say it might be best just to do top to bottom. That way we're not jumping back and forth. And I'm not because the edits were created more recently and not everyone may have had the chance to read ahead. I would be okay with doing like a quick read through if that would help or something. But yeah, I would say start from the top. If anyone has any edits that they think should be adjusted just to the intro where we're explaining ourselves or explaining why we want to have feedback in the process sooner rather than later, go ahead and say something.
So part of the way that I structured this was just as with any of your documents, just trying to put it in writing. So the way that I drafted it was as a letter to the leadership of the bureaus. And then of course we can copy whoever you think is relevant, but that's the way that it was crafted, with some basic background information again at the front. Part of what I tried to capture here was one of the pub members had recommended kind of starting with a why are we giving you this feedback now? What's the intent behind it? And then moving into some of the values that you had developed beginning in the August meeting and then further discussed, focusing again around the foundation of equity, moving into some of the specific priority areas and just a little bit more detail about some of the thinking behind each of those priority areas. You can see I've flagged some areas where I have some questions or where I didn't have any language crafted yet. And then finally, moving into some of the more specific potential trade-off areas to consider. Again, this is an area that you had some preliminary conversations about, but certainly could be more developed. And then closing with something about kind of next steps and what you're looking forward to. So I will move back up towards the top and we can start wherever somebody has some comments.
Hey, this is Robin. I'll jump in. I personally thought that the intro of like why we're here, as well as the paragraphs on equity, were really succinct. And so I thought the first place that I was actually looking to add anything was to navigate uh, number two, maintenance of infrastructure and regulatory compliance. And I think, as Amy noted on the side, that these were like separate previously. And as the person who initially threw this part of this draft together, I think my personal point of view and understanding on it was that regulatory compliance included maintenance of infrastructure. And then I also see that Amy was clear to say that not all regulatory compliance is directly related to um, capital, which I'm assuming is money on hand. So I'm not sure if Amy wanted to elucidate on that one, or if Lorraine wanted to go in with a response.
My comment is about a different section.
Okay, so I'll respond very quickly. I just flagged it as a question. So I'm not, I wasn't suggesting any sort of opposition to combining them. It was just a change from what the board had discussed previously. So certainly could go ahead with this combination. And if you felt that something needed to be highlighted underneath this section that otherwise might be missing, I just wanted to flag it so that we would be able to come back to it. So it's more for the group just to put any ideas on the table. Lorraine, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm trying to unmute. Could we go back up to the top? And okay, let me see. Down a little bit to the equity statement. This is reading differently to me. All of the board's considerations are through the lens of intersectionality, understanding that that is a new framing to me. Am I missing something here?
You're correct. That is new language, which is why I was coming back to the board. That was some new framing that Robin had suggested. So maybe Robin, do you want to speak to that briefly?
Yes, I did add that language, and now you have me. I'm not sure that I'm able to reflect immediately, but that was kind of the feeling that I was picking up from our focus on equity. Um, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that one.
I don't know what to do with that.
Lorraine, do you have concern about the entire language or suggest, you're saying you don't know what to do with it? Is it something that you would suggest removing or just for more conversation?
Robin said she's I'm sorry. I don't know why my tongue is being tied. Robin is saying that she suggested it, but I am the explanation as to why I don't know what to do with it, because this is a huge change. I don't know what it means. All of the board, I don't know what it means. I'm trying to understand what through the lens of intersectionality. What does that mean?
Yeah, I would say if as board members were struggling to understand it, then certainly need more thought and explanation if it's going to be used by the bureaus in a meaningful way. So maybe I'll at least just flag that as an issue for us to kind of dive a little deeper into and figure out if there's different language that would be clearer. So maybe not right in this moment because I think we might need some time to think about that, but
Isn't the board using an equity lens? Hasn't that been stated
yes.
and agreed to before?
So some of the language that's kind of before and after that sentence that's highlighted is pulling from some of the other documents that the board has created, or language that has been provided previously. There is intersectionality, kind of the intersection of different equity issues and people's identities, I think is referenced in some of the annual reports as well. So I think this might have been an attempt to kind of incorporate that piece into the broader statement, but in the reports, I think it's a much longer description of what is meant. So we'd have to go back and look at some of that to see if there might be some language that you've already agreed to that is clearer than the way that it's stated here.
Okay.
Are there any other sections that folks wanted to focus in on? Let's scroll briefly back down to the priority areas. Robin, go ahead.
Yeah. So with number 3, I didn't quite know what to add to that, so I think I would just want to specifically review our last meeting. But I wasn't sure if the fact that I wrote through immediate climate change mitigation was essentially counterbalancing what we've said previously, which is that we need to be investing in maintenance more than capital projects. And so I just wasn't sure if immediate was the correct word or if it should be ongoing. And that way we're understanding that this is not a new thing that we're doing, but a continued process. And yeah, that's the only thing that I had for that one, because I was still kind of searching what kind of language and what we'd want to use for that specific one.
There wasn't a lot of discussion at the prior meeting about this specific category. I know that it was spoken to as a priority, but we didn't get a lot of detail, which is why you know, I left it as an area to come back to. So if people have any specific examples of kind of areas of focus, trade-offs to consider, that kind of thing, certainly put those on the table. Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Heather. Robin, I think you're right. Ongoing is probably a better word for that. If we wanted to add a little bit of detail in there, we could say just to ensure that the city continues to do work from the 2022 Climate Emergency Work Plan. There's a specific section titled Natural Resources and Green Infrastructure that is, and a lot of that work is assigned to BES. So maybe just citing that particular work plan.
That's helpful. Thank you, Heather. Anybody else?
So I had an edit on number 4 that I wanted to look at. Specifically with just the title line, I think that I wanted to specifically say multifamily resident in the line and not just, and so I thought it made sense to say for low income multifamily residents. And then I actually thought it would be beneficial to maybe add an extra sentence or two in the summary below it. And the quick off the top sentence that I had was that these residents are not listed as direct customers on their complex's water account, nor are they listed as customers on any utility bill through the city, period. And so I wanted to just draw attention to the fact that they receive water and sanitation services, but in the case of like a pipe bursting or a water leak, they really have no protection from exponentially higher water bills. And of course, as multifamily residents are more likely to live on a fixed income, in combination with the fact that non-payment of your utilities can lead to eviction, that we just maybe like that, just those last 2 sentences that I was saying, it was like a reason why we were specifically focusing on it as extra important. Looks like Bob has something to say. Go ahead. You might be muted, Bob, if you're trying to chat.
No, I just waited to get called on. So I guess I'm getting called on. Sorry, I had to
Sorry,
check
go
out
ahead,
for
Bob.
check out for a couple of seconds. I just want to go back to number 3, and you may have hit this while I was ducking out. Protection of public health and watershed health through climate change mitigation. That to me doesn't make any sense. I think we could say protection of public health, watershed health, and climate resiliency. But I don't think. I think there are 3 things that are overlapping and interconnected, but also in some ways different as well. I guess it was just so exactly protection of public health, watershed health, and ensuring climate resilient communities. Does that work okay for folks?
I'm seeing a couple thumbs up and no hands raised. Karen, go ahead.
Yes, that works for me. Thank you for that clarification, Bob. I think that flows much better. I have a comment on I have a few, but I'm just going to do one at the moment. The maintenance, the number 2 above that, maintenance of infrastructure and regulatory compliance. Generally, I would like us to be, let's see, perhaps a bit less, what am I trying to say? Kind of not exactly opinionated, but like stating things that we're actually not really sure will happen. I think it's, as an example, the sentence that this allows extended lifetimes for our purchases and a reduction in labor and capital cost related to catastrophic failures. So that reads to me as a bit more certain than we really have the really knowledge and information to project that kind of certainty. So I would prefer if we could state things in terms of perhaps our concerns, and I don't know, I don't want to get into wordsmithing at the moment, but that example perhaps would be rephrased like, I don't know, just something like, the pub is concerned that not having sufficient funding dedicated towards maintaining existing infrastructure may lead to, right? Basically, what do you call it when you're making future generations pay for something that current generations should have paid attention to. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it at that for the moment and kind of gather my thoughts on another comment. Thank you.
While Karen is gathering her thoughts, if somebody else has a comment, and Bob, if I realize that I think I responded and started making the change about resilient communities, but I thought I heard that there might have been something else coming after that, and so I didn't want to cut you off if there was something else that I missed.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I appreciate Karen bringing attention to specifically how we're stating things, and I was trying to navigate being too passive and also being too declarative, but knowing that declarative statements, I think, will help us. And so just navigating that, yes. And then jumping to number 5, I wanted to throw a few edits to our 5th point. Okay, so yeah, with number 5, I'm going to be honest, when I realized
Robin, I'm not sure if it's just me, but you have cut out. You might be frozen. We'll come back to Robin once her connection is stable again. All right, anybody else? Just as far as time check, we have about, oh, Robin, maybe you just came back. You froze right at the beginning of whatever you were saying, so I missed.
Go ahead, Amy.
I missed your last comment about number 5. You froze right at the very beginning, and so I did not catch any of what you said. I don't know if the issue was on my end or yours, but I did not hear what you said.
Okay, so I'll just keep my video off for this part. Okay, so when I was reflecting on this 5th portion, I think that when I was writing the draft that I was mistaken, because I was specifically talking about a tiered rate structure, but to my understanding, it was a tiered rate structure based on square footage of a property and not household income. And so I just wanted to, what I was trying to highlight in this was that I would have to change the income specifically to related to square footage, but that to my knowledge, the utility bureaus are currently offering us 3 tiers, and they don't have a cutoff yet to the 3rd tier. And if we are pushing for affordability and equity, that we may want to specifically say that we do not want to like only a certain number of tiers, and that if it is equitable, that we need to have however many tiers is necessary to provide the services that we have in relation to exponentially large houses. And so I think I was trying to say that while being slightly confused. And so let me actually, before I stop talking, let me say what I had kind of edited off of just the couple sentences that you have in that number 5. I had really just edited the last sentence of it that says this is a step forward and should also include tiers for Portlanders who. I essentially just X'd out the rest of that sentence and the next sentence and wrote, this is a step forward and should also include tiers for Portlanders who have exponentially larger property sizes, and that a new tier should be created if it is necessary to equitably provide stormwater and sewer rates to everyone. And that'll be the end of my comment on this one.
Great, thank you, Robin. Karen, are you ready to come back to the next issue that you wanted to raise before we wrap up? I think we're going to have sometime in between this meeting and the next meeting to do some revision. So if what you are proposing needs more time, I can touch base with you outside the meeting and make sure that some suggestions get written into the next version of the document.
That sounds great, Amy. I can send, and I apologize for not having done my homework. So yeah, I can absolutely just send some written comments.
Okay. And that's true for all of you, of course. This is still just a draft that has had, just limited input so far. So certainly want your feedback on any sort of expansion or changes to make sure that it's capturing the intent of the full group. So please feel free to send edits to me probably within the next week. So I think just to close out this, I was proposing that we kind of figure out what the next steps were, but I think I just did that in the next kind of version of drafting of the document. So I will loop back with you all in read ahead prior to the next meeting. So we only have about 12 minutes left of the meeting. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Robin, to kind of figure out next steps. We had on the agenda today still some time to talk about eco roof requirements. I believe a pub member had shared some concern and asked for some agenda time. I'm not sure whether we have enough time in this meeting, but maybe we can at least get some of the issue on the table before we talk about briefly about agenda for the next meeting.
This is Robin. Based on how much we love to get into things, I actually want to propose that we table the eco roof requirement and just spend the last 5 or 10 minutes that we have together, just really formalizing what we're going to do in between now and the next meeting and what we want on our next meeting's agenda.
Great, we'll skip to slide. So based on the conversation that we had today, there's some carryover of both of the items. So probably the letter about some concern with the organizational structure and the way that decision was made, as well as the letter that we were just looking at. So those two items may be the bulk of that November meeting, unless people wanted to suggest an alternative.
That sounds right.
And what are your priorities then for the subsequent meetings in December? And I don't want to single you out, Bob, but you had raised the eco roof topic. And if it is it a priority for the November 16th meeting, or could it wait until the December 5th to come back to that topic?
No, it's live right now. In fact, the planning commission had a hearing on it today, so it'll probably be passed, but
it'll
not
be
sure.
too late. Is that what you're saying?
We'll see. I think there's an opportunity to hit it again before it goes to council. So I think it's relevant in the next meeting. I would also add that I think we should ask the commissioner in charge to come and talk about what happened to council. And again, I really respect the way he handled it, but I think it's important when these kinds of major changes occur that the commissioner in charge come and talk to the pub and hear feedback directly. We'll send a letter, but it'd be better to transmit this directly and hear from him what he's thinking.
It would be a really good third topic for the next meeting, given its timeliness.
All right, I will follow up and see how the timing works for that.
And do we have the adequate volunteers for helping you to write these, like the letter on the rate hearing delay and the city org? I know that Bob raised their hand, and I know that I can continue to assist with the values trade-off statement editing, but I wasn't sure if anyone else wanted to throw their hand in to be available to do some edits in between now and this upcoming meeting.
I'm willing to help out on the letter about the Natural Resources Department debacle.
Great, thank you, Julia.
Yeah, honestly, so with that, we've got a few topics to work into our next meeting. And with December 5th, though, December 5th, do you think we'll need an update on recruitment at that point? Or will it be a bit too ahead of the process?
I believe we probably will be able to have an update back from the subcommittee based on the availability that I just received. I think we'll probably be able to meet in 2 weeks. So I will finalize that, and then we can report back and then identify any other potential carry forward. And particularly if the commissioner, if sometimes the commissioner's schedule obviously is very complicated, so I'm not sure, how far out might need to plan that. So I will look at future dates as well.
I mean, it's just hard for me to look at this list and know what the most timely thing is for December 5th.
Yes, it's kind of a moving target.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like any one of these things might be really important depending on what happens between now and then.
Yes, and I am coordinating with the Water Bureau about best timing for the filtration plant update, because we had, I think, originally talked about potentially doing that in December. And I need to look back at my notes. I believe it might make more sense towards early January. So I will let you know. All right, well, certainly feel free to reach out to me in between meetings as you have any input about upcoming topics and priorities.
All right, well, information is on the screen. Any members of the public wants to reach out to us. Public comment happens in every meeting, so please do send us your opinions. And the next full board meeting will be November 16th at 11 a.m. And with that, I guess this meeting is adjourned.